Alright guys, today we're going to be doing a trailer hitch with wiring harness installation on a Mazda CX-5. We're going to do this video step by step, stage by stage, and I'm going to show you guys how to get the hitch installed. Obviously you can see the metal portion, the hitch itself is right here. It's going to be a bolt-in. Comes for this model. I'll post a link for this specific kit. Now installing the actual hitch itself, fairly easy. The wiring harness we have is going to be a little bit more in depth. It's got connectors on it, tons of leads, and what I do like is they give you a ton of line there to be able to route everything. Alright guys, I got the harness all laid out to easily explain to you how this gets hooked up, okay? So, on this side, now keep in mind, I routed it on the ground how it gets routed in the car. So passenger side, this is going to connect into your taillight connector, the turn signal one. So what you do is you take your vehicle harness, you plug it in to this connector, and then you plug this back into the taillight assembly, and what that does is just a pass-through. It just pulls signal from it. Alright, now you do the exact same thing with this one right here, except for now we're on the driver's side. Okay, now the brake light connector gets connected into this. This is also a pass-through on the driver's side. This right here, as you can imagine, the white one, this is a ground, okay? So we're gonna have to drill a little hole and ground it. You're gonna have to scuff it, clean it up, make sure it's bare metal. Do not drill through things unless you know what is behind it. It needs to be solid metal, it needs to be a body metal component. Now this one right here, this is the fun one, okay? So this is your 12 volt reference from the battery, okay? So we're gonna have to run a cable from the back of this area all the way over to the front up at the battery, okay? And now it's gonna have to be spliced into the positive side of the battery. So right now I'm gonna figure out how I want to route that. I'm probably gonna go below the vehicle, along the frame. I'm going to make sure there's no chafing points, no points where the wire is going to get pinched. But this is a newer vehicle, so we don't want to pull the interior part and start breaking clips and all that kind of stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the wire down underneath along the body of the car on the exterior, and then we're going to bring it back up into the cargo area. And I will show you guys how I execute that. But just to give you a reference again on the harness, it looks confusing, but it's not. You got your trailer connector, you got your trailer module box, which I'm going to show you in a minute, comes with the kit. That just gets plugged right into here. Okay, driver side turn signal, passenger side turn signal, brake light on the driver side connector, 12 volt power, ground. Okay, simple deal guys. Now I've got a little bit of a head start here. I lifted the cargo tray out, took the mat out, folded the seats forward, and started disassembling some of the trim already. Now there's a couple points in which there are little plastic push rivets, one there, so driver and passenger side. Then there's also one here and one here, and then what you're going to do is you're going to lift up on this trim panel that goes across the bottom, because we're going to have to follow this harness. We're not splicing into the harness, but we're going to need to follow the same path, okay? Now the trim panels I just took and set in the car. You also got to take the tail light trim panels off. Now these can be tricky. They go on that little hole slot there. you got to use a pick and you got to pull from the top. So get a pick in over here on the side, kind of work it out, and then kind of finesse it gently, and they pop out on either side, as you can see that, because we're going to need access to the connectors that go into the taillight housing. Okay, the next thing you're going to want to do is this weather strip liner right here. What we're actually going to do is be gentle with it, okay? But we're going to pull this back, okay? It's got a little bit of adhesive, as you can see. We're going to have to re-adhesive that. Here's the reason I got to pull this back, is because we're going to need to, yeah, and that glue is very, very tacky, so watch out. We're going to need to fish stuff behind this trim panel. Hence why I pulled this back, so we'll do the same on this side. Like I said, tug lightly. Don't put too much force into it. We're not trying to tear the rubber. Just like so. Now, as you can see, that just gave me clearance to pull this back and be able to route stuff up through the panel, okay? I'm gonna get you guys better lighting as we go along with this. The other thing, you don't have to move these out of the way. Makes it a little bit more handy, up to you if you want to do that. Now, this obviously, as you guys are aware, is where the trailer connects, so we need to keep in mind as we're doing the job that this needs to be routed to the outside of the vehicle. Now what there is there's going to be tail light adapter connectors right here, okay? The long harness side is going to go over on the passenger side, and then there's also another one that's going to go over on the driver's side. So I will show you guys exactly how that gets routed once we mock up the harness, show you how to plug it in. Alright, back to the positive side terminal here. We're going to need to access this. There's a little tab right here, okay? You're going to pull back, you're going to lift up. That is going to expose all the connectors, okay? Now we're going to be able to, look at that. It's got an extra terminal for us right there for accessories. That is the one we're going to use. We're going to route it down, across, underneath, and coming back into the trunk. That's going to be the challenging part, and I will show you guys exactly how I execute that. Easier said than done. Always try to pull the weather sealing over the connector. Alright guys, I got this pretty well figured out how I'm going to do this, alright? If you look over in this compartment area, there's no exhaust. Okay, I'm directly under the car. I'm looking at the driver's side control arm bushing right there. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to send it up where my light is going through there. We're going to send it in through this plastic connector, or not connector, this plastic shield, okay? We're going to run it under this shield, and we're going to run it down the body line, right? We're going to come up through the rear suspension. Make sure you clear all the control arms. You can't have any wires in this area. Okay, I'll zoom out here so you guys can see that. No wires around any of these parts. So what we're going to have to do is once we get through the shield, we're going to come up over the frame, and then we're going to come over this mount right here, and I'm gonna drill a little hole and we're gonna come in through the trunk right there, okay? Now there's definitely easier ways to do this, but I like doing it the right way. I like doing it legitimately. So, you'll notice there is a ton of plastic connectors all along this undershield. There's also several 10mm bolts and a couple nuts. So all that's going to be removed. We're going to drop this first shield completely. This shield already got loose from the plastic guard right here, which comes around the other side of it, which we can fish wires through. So I'm going to pull this off and we're going to start running that wire. Okay guys, quick update. Want to show you how I'm doing this, alright? Now here's what I did. I ended up dropping almost all of the splash shields. Now this one I left hanging just because it was a little bit more convenient that way. There's two little plastic tabs. I didn't want to risk those breaking because they got pressure on them. But here's what I did. I went in through the first big slot on the frame, okay, and I ran the wire all the way down. The wire dumps out at the last bigger hole at the rear, okay, because there's the fuel tank, so we got a pretty long run where it's under the body, which is good. There's no chafing points inside the body. One thing you want to watch out for though, okay, see this right here? That's sharp around the hole. I'm going to put a rubber grommet around it so it doesn't chafe on the metal. That's the fastest way to create a short, okay? So what I'm going to do with the wire now is we're going to tuck it up through this little hole up here. We're going to go over the frame rail, and again we're going to come back and we're going to go up through the trunk, okay? I will show you guys the rest of that, but I wanted to stress, make sure you put rubber grommets around these, okay? They can't be rubbing on the frame right there. You know, side note guys, this has nothing to do with trailer wiring, but look what you get when you pay for undercoating from a dealership. And this isn't the first car I've seen like this. This is most dealerships, like, hey, sure, yeah, we got some of the lines, right? But, you know, it'd be nice to have especially welded and mated areas undercoated. I mean, what the hell? They literally undercoat them with the plastic shields on. Great. So anyways, don't shoot yourself in the foot. Okay, as you can see, I have quite a bit of wire drooping down. Okay. Don't run it too short and then not be able to make it up into the engine bay, because keep in mind, like I said, we still got to go through this hole up here and up towards the battery, which you can kind of see up there. So make sure you got some slack on both sides, okay? I know the wire, it's hard to focus on, but there's the wire, okay? So I'm going to keep working on the rear here. I'm going to send it up and route it. I'm not going to film all of that because it's going to be very tedious and kind of a pain. Before we do any drilling on the trunk at all, we're going to lower the vehicle. We're going to verify that there's nothing in the area that we're going to drill, okay? The other thing is we're going to need to seal it with RTV. Now, as far as sending it up through here, I am going to need a point of contact to secure the cable going up there. I will film that or take a picture for you guys. Now I want to show you guys, I found this little rubber grommet, something I had in my box, alright. Now if I just stick this in there, it can just move around, it'll eventually vibrate and then it'll start chafing, okay? So what I want to do, because it does have a little bit of tug if I force it up in there, but here's what we're going to do is we're going to seal this with RTV, okay? Now the reason for that is so the boot doesn't shift and it will help with isolation. Okay, we're gonna do it just like that. I'm gonna seal some RTV around it. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna tape around it as well. And what that's gonna do is hold the RTV in there while it cures. I'm gonna let this hang while the RTV cures. Once it sets up, I'm confident it'll be in a position where it won't pull through or push. Now keep in mind, we're not gonna be tugging on this because I'm gonna have to secure it up along the body. What I'm probably gonna do is put something that holds it and go right in through here, or potentially self-tapper through the body. But for right now, we're gonna let this just sit there and cure. All right, guys. As for this back one, I had to get a little creative, okay? So that's what we're doing, we're getting a little creative. Now what I'm gonna do is put 2 layers of silicone hose around this, just to help fill some of the void. And you'll see what I'm talking about in a minute. I'm currently sliding it up. Okay, so there's gonna be the first piece right there. And then the second piece, we're gonna slide over the first piece once we get it where we need it. So, I'm gonna slide this up like that. I'm gonna slide another layer up over that piece, and you know what I'm probably gonna have to do? Put them both together and then send them up. Now keep in mind, we don't wanna be tugging on this cable too much because that RTV is still curing on the other end, so don't tug the cable. But I'm gonna route it just like that, and then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put RTV around this tube, and essentially what that should do is create a buffer in the event that, and I'm gonna pull these back. Going to create a buffer in the event that vibration starts to take place and wiggle the wire back and forth, okay? What I'm looking at is drilling right through here, but what we may end up doing instead, I think I'm going to drill more on the side so we don't push that foam piece up. We want everything to sit nice and flush. Oh my God, guys. Alright, I won't be dramatic, but I came from the bottom. Always drill from the bottom because you don't want to drill from the top and then realize it's a point where you can't fish the wire through. So the drill bit I used, it does look fairly big. It's really not. It's a 5/16 drill bit. It is just slightly smaller than the silicone hose that I'm going to shove through along with the wire. Now the reason I made it slightly smaller is I actually want that metal to kind of bite onto the silicone so it doesn't slide back and forth, because if that silicone were just to drop through, the wire is going to start chafing. It's going to create a short, which we don't want. Spiking some of the shields down here. There we go. Now I'm going to send this all the way up. Once you got a good amount up, you can switch to the top. It should fit our silicone tube now. And again, the reason I'm double layering this is because I don't want any possible chafing or anything of the sort. So, we're sticking this down nearly flush. Okay, when I say nearly, I'm talking about that right there. Very close to being flush, but not quite. We're gonna take our, well, for me it's ultra gray. It's my favorite, guys, you already know that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to push silicone in around this wire, and I'm going to also rub it around the body right there too, so that we're nice and sealed, okay, because we don't want any moisture, anything getting through there whatsoever. So with that being said, I just noticed we actually need a little bit more cable. It's not all the way pulled through. Now it is. And that's something you guys want to double check before you do this is, you know, don't start pulling or don't start sealing the wire with RTV until you know for sure that's the proper wire position. Now I'm going to take this, I'm going to dab it all the way around. Now try not to make a huge mess, guys, especially with RTV. I'm sure you guys that work on stuff know it is a pain. So what I'm actually going to do is wipe this all the way around. I'm going to put even a little heavier amount, and then I'm going to wipe it with a rag so it looks a lot more clean. So something just like that should work. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to wipe the residual residue away from it. Doesn't need to be a clean rag, doesn't need to be anything fancy. So we're going to do that. I'm going to pull from over here. And the residue you want to wipe up too, okay? We don't want RTV all over their newer Mazda car or SUV. Okay, so now keep in mind, we always want the RTV to cure in the position it's going to sit. This cable is going to sit just like this, okay? Because the cable actually, we're going to fish in towards that plastic trim, okay? So bend the wire, don't necessarily kink it, but just bend it down so it cures in that position. Again, you can use Gorilla Tape if you need to. I'm just going to clean this wire off quick. Going to clean some more residue up. Okay. Now, seal it on the bottom too, okay? Some of you guys might think that's overkill, but it's not. We don't want any moisture getting in and out of the silicone tube. And the other thing is we do not want to create a rust condition either, okay? So I'm going to seal the bottom and then we're going to keep moving. Alright guys, we're working from the engine bay now. What I'm doing is I'm fishing that wire through. I want to show you guys something important though, okay? Okay, it's kind of hard to see on the camera here. I'm going to try to get you guys a close view. I'm actually fishing the camera into the engine bay. Okay, so see that black cable in the middle? That is the wire, okay? Now, something very important. I ran the wire on the driver's side of the main brake line that comes up. The reason for it is we have a steering shaft and we have other components that we want to stay away from. What ideally we want to stay away from is as much heat as possible, because the heat can cause the wire to melt. If it touches the catalytic converter or any of the exhaust, it's done. And most importantly, right there we have a steering linkage, okay? So that is why, and I'll grab the light here, that is why I ran the cable on the driver's side of the battery tray and as close to the driver's side frame rail as possible. There's the cable, okay? Now, pull on it, make sure it's not loose or hanging, okay? This one is neither. Not only that, you can't see down there, but it's clearing everything right now and hugging right against the body, which is what we want. Now remember when I said have some slack, okay? I only made it to here. We got to make it to the battery. Now keep in mind, we still got this guy. That's got to hook up to the battery. So again, I'm going to hook it right up to that terminal there. And then we're going to stuff this down in front of the battery. If you see what I'm talking about, okay? Now the last and final connection, minus the one at the rear, we haven't done yet. So this is the second to last connection, is we're going to have to connect these two cables. Again, use a butt connector, use heat shrink. We do not want moisture getting in between our connection there. I hope that helps you guys. Alright guys, if you want to learn how to wire like a pro, follow my lead here. Okay, now this comes in the kit. It's a fusible link. it comes looped, so you have to cut it in half, and then you have one end that attaches on the battery, one end that is going to attach to this heavy duty black power feed that's going to be ran under the vehicle all the way across. So the connectors they come with, in my opinion, junk. Okay, I would never use them. Now I have legitimate terminals, as you can see this one here. Now here's what I did. I took red weather stripping. Now here, or heat shrinking, excuse me. The reason I use red, it's on the positive battery terminal, okay? I'm a huge believer in anything that comes off that's aftermarket should be red, okay? Plus yellow looks ugly, let's be real here. So what I did is took the heat shrink and I bound it all up. It's actually 2 shorter pieces. Comes in this little kit here you can get from Dorman. I find it to be very handy. Different colors, different sizes, etc. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this weather strip back. First I'm going to heat this end up so it shrinks down. Then I'm going to pull the weather strip over it, and then I'm going to heat this whole line and it'll seal everything exactly, which is exactly what we want, excuse me. This end I'm probably going to use their butt connector for that, but more importantly, use the heat shrinking, okay? Again, guys, I live in Minnesota. We have winters, salt, corrosion, all the bad stuff. So when I do wiring, I make sure it's sealed up. I recommend you do the same. I'm going to continue on with this, get this prepped and ready to go. Then we'll move on to running this throughout the whole underside of the vehicle. Alright? Alright guys, I'm going to show you how to seal wires like a pro, okay? Now this is the butt connector we're going to be using. It's going to connect this wire to the wire that we just ran, okay? Now here's the thing, do you see the size difference here? So one thing we got to keep in mind is we want to be able to seal this butt connector, but also to the wire, okay? So now we have this which fits over the butt connector, okay? That's what we want. But when we do that, that's not going to shrink all the way down onto the wire, okay? It's going to shrink, but it's not going to shrink all the way down and seal. So here's how I do it. You find different sizes that fit into each other, okay? So yellow fits into blue, blue fits into red, okay? You get the idea. We're going to have one of these on each side. Now again, some of you might say, hey, that's overkill. Well, guess what? When it comes to wiring, I always overkill it. I do not want wires getting moisture intrusion or having any issues of the sort because you didn't take the extra 30 seconds. So, or we could say 3 minutes. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to strip this back. We're going to connect it onto here first. Now, before you put the butt connector on, start with the smallest, slide it down, then go to the second biggest, then slide the yellow one down. Then we can stagger those all backwards when we go to connect the other wire. Now we're going to do the same on the other wire, and I'm going to show you in a minute. The other thing, don't be afraid to strip the wires back far enough, okay? If you don't reach all the way up into the metal collar on that butt connector, you're not going to have any connection. So you need to do it at least halfway or beyond so that you make contact with that, okay? Now yes, this is going to sit into the wire slightly. It doesn't matter. If the wires push into each other and then get smushed by the crimp connection, that's even better, okay? But just make sure you always strip these back far enough. Now, I'm going to bring you guys over here. You see how I got this set up? Red staggered over blue, or excuse me, vice versa. Blue staggered over the red because it's bigger. Now these I already have all three, okay? I have the red, the blue, and the yellow. We're going to put our butt connector on the end, and then we're going to slide the whole assembly over, and I'll show you. Alright guys, as you can see, we got our crimp connection. Always pull on them and make sure they can't pull apart, okay? Now, what I typically do is use electrical tape, and I'll do a little bit of a wrap just to kind of hold them. Then what we're going to do is we're going to slide our big piece over with all our little pieces staggered into it. Alright guys, I had to redo it. I had to solder it, and then I just put some electrical tape over it. The butt connectors that this trailer kit comes with are absolute garbage. I'm not using them. So what I'm doing right now is I'm going to heat up this electrical tape. Again, make sure not to heat the weather stripping, but I'm going to heat that up and just shrink it down just a little bit, and then we're going to slide the the heat shrink over this connection. That's all you need, just like that. You can make it nice and tacky. Okay, now we're going to take our yellow, we're going to follow it with the blue, and it might be a little stubborn because of the tape. That's alright. We're going to pull this over. Now we're directly in the middle, and then we're going to work our other end in as well. Kind of self-explanatory. Alright guys, now we're at the fun part. You get to watch the heat shrink. Always hold the wire vertical, or straight I guess I should say. And then what we're going to do, you don't want to actually burn the heat shrink, you just want to get it warm. And as you get it warm, you want to rotate ends, so front, back, sides, and you're going to see it shrink down. And once you see it shrink down quite a bit, you don't need to keep heating. At that point, we're done with it. So you can see the electrical tape now under the heat shrink, which means it has shrunk and it has sealed it. So then go over your very end points where each connection is, get those extra warm so those seal, and just like that, we are done. We got an insulated wire now. Alright guys, connected and it looks factory. That's the kind of shit that gets me horned up. We're installing an aftermarket kit, and guess what? You would never know. That's the professional way to do it. Alright guys, we're at the rear. We're going to make one of our last connections. Now the ground, obviously, yes, that's a connection, but I'm talking about actually having to connect wires together. So, our RTV is pretty much cured. We can tug on the cable now. It's not really moving around anymore. Now, you're going to have to pull this back. There's a clip here, and there's a clip up here, okay? So two different points, there's clips. Pop this panel back, fish the harness through. I'm not a fan of trying to remove these entirely, okay? It's just, you can crack plastic. If you knew what one of these cost, you would have the same opinion as I do, okay? So I just lightly bent it back, sent the connectors through up top. Connectors are ran through on the passenger side. Now, we're gonna have to cut this wire. We got a ton of it right here. We don't need all of this wrapped up in there. But we gotta be smart about it because this module is gonna be buried behind here as well. It's gonna be tucked away. So we're gonna need a little bit of slack. So, I would say maybe 3-4 feet will be just fine. Now, I'm counting this as well. That's almost a foot. So I'm gonna find about 3 feet here. And we're going to cut it once you cut it, you can't ever extend the cable unless you start making a bunch of solder connections or crimp connections. Don't recommend it. So just make sure, see, like here I know I'm going to have plenty of flexibility with this, okay? So make sure that you're cutting it in the correct spot. So we're going to cut it. We're going to strip the wire. Now here's the thing, stop using your teeth and stop using a razor blade and actually taking wire out of the wire itself. All you're doing is reducing the amount of current flow through the wire. Now I'm going to take this, I'm going to use my special pliers, and then we're going to pull it off. Got a nice little lead there. We're going to hook this into our butt connector. Now again, this was for our 12 volt power source. So this is the one that we ran under the car all the way up through into the engine bay and connected to the battery, okay? Now I have no fuse in it, which is how you should be doing it. Do not put the fuse in it before you get everything done, okay? Because the second this touches metal, boom, fuse pops, now you're out of fuse. So you get my point. So I always usually twist the wires just slightly, just to keep them a little bit tighter. I'm going to stick it into the butt connector, and then we're going to crimp it. Now one thing I'm going to do here as well is I'm going to get some of that big heat shrink, slide it over, and I'm going to stagger it so there's one smaller and one bigger. We're going to do the same thing we did up there. Never hurts to have stuff completely sealed. Again, we're going to straighten the wire out. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to pull it more straight, and then I'm going to go at it. Just like so. Alright, now again, I want to bring something to your attention, okay? You don't want the wires wrapped up or kinked. You want them nice and clean. You don't want a ton of tension on them. As factory as possible. Now, this harness that connects over on the passenger side, this is what we're looking at. It's got to go underneath. And then you're going to have to follow the harness that comes out, making sure to avoid any connector tabs or anything of the sort. It's going to follow this same harness, and it's going to go up into the passenger, or into the driver's side, excuse me. Now, the other thing is, there's a lot going on in here now, because that's where the most of our harness is. The only place you're going to fit this trailer hitch module is in this cavity in there, okay? Now the other thing, we're going to take one of those 10 mils out of the brake light, the brake lamp mounting bolt that comes right through the sheet metal there. I'm going to take that 10 millimeter off, I'm going to grind the metal down a little bit, and that's what we're going to use for a ground. It's a nice contact point, it's grounded to the body, it'll work great, okay? Now, the very last thing is how we're going to route this guy, okay? Now, as you can see, they give you plenty of cable, okay? So, if I had to put that in perspective, it's probably a good 4 feet still sticking out, which is awesome. That's what we want. But what I'm going to see, and this may be in the video, it may not, but I'm actually going to see if we can come through, drop it down potentially, and come through under by the bumper. That would be more ideal than having the wiring come through the actual, rubber seal on the tailgate. So that's what I'm going to start working on right now, guys. Alright guys, our ground is prepped. Now I'm gonna put a bigger washer on it. Excuse me. I'm gonna put a bigger size washer on it. The reason for that, it just expands the surface area of where that connector, or where that connection point is gonna touch the metal. It'll give us a bigger surface area, better ground continuity. All right, ground is in. Check that off the list. Now we're gonna hide the module back there and we're gonna start putting the trim back together. All right guys, it's that time. The worst part of the job. Well, maybe not the worst part, but not fun. I am gonna kind of show you how to do this. So here's the hitch assembly. It is sitting upside down right now. Obviously we got 2 bolt holes here on either side. And hopefully it'll focus here. The way you have to do this, you got a big, on each side you got a big hole here. Okay, that's where your hardware fits through. Okay, it comes with these wires that thread onto the bolts. Okay, so you have to fish the wire up through the big hole. Okay, through the big one. Then you have to send the wire through the last one here. Now measure it out, because I measured it out. That's just under 6 inches, which is our distance between the bolts. So I'm going to show you how to properly fish them through so that you save yourself a lot of time and a lot of swear words. Alright, so here's how you do this. You got to send the wire through like I had mentioned. And then the way this has to be done is you need to send this up at an angle. So you're going to take the bolt off. You're going to send this plate up through. Okay. Then you're going to pull this bolt through as well. You're going to pull the whole assembly around, wiggle it, and drop it in just like that. You guys get all that? Alright, once you get those sent through, here's another example over here. Okay, leave the wires on. You're gonna need those to send them through the hitch bracket, because if one of those pops up and falls into the frame, game over. You're gonna be spending a long time with a magnet tool. Then you're gonna have to pull both out because you can only go through the big port that's closest to the rear. So just be conscientious of that. Leave the wire on. Alright guys, the trailer hitch is in. It looks almost factory. I like it. Looks really good. And for those of you that are curious where the harness normally sits, what we got to do is if you got a WeatherTech liner or factory liner, you're going to have to pull that up. You're going to pull the back of it up. And then what we're going to do is we're going to grab the harness. Well, usually you grab it all in one. Okay. So here's the harness, okay? Now, here's what I recommend doing. When this harness is attached to the trailer, unfortunately, the only way to do it is to have it sticking out the tailgate. I'm not a huge fan of that, but there is no way to get that plug through the body somewhere and have it come out the bottom. There just isn't a way. Well, there might be a way. It's called cutting a giant hole in the vehicle, which I'm not willing to do. So what I was going to show you guys is I highly recommend, what I did is I got some clear silicone hose. I'm going to actually put a zip tie over it. Actually, you know what? I'm going to put some electrical tape over it. But have it in a position where it can sit right here. And here's why. Because when the tailgate comes down and shuts, it kind of squishes. It's a very tight clearance between the bumper and the harness. Now that is why they make the harness nice and flat, okay? However, the harness will start to rub on the paint and it will start to wear a hole through the paint. Not only that, the tailgate can rub a hole through the harness. So by doing it like I have right now, okay, set up just like this, well, I'll tell you what, I'll just shut the tailgate. You'll be able to see what I'm talking about. So we're gonna shut the tailgate. Okay. Now, I'm sure you guys can see what I'm saying. Now it's nice and tight. It's not gonna sit there and chafe back and forth and back and forth, which is what will eventually wear a hole through your paint and will eventually wear right through the wires. Now, ideally you want this sticking out just a little bit further, but have some kind of buffer here, guys. It's a smart thing to do. So overall, had I not been filming, I would say this job is probably a 3-hour job, doing it the legitimate way. Now, if you're just gonna slam it in and shove it into the panels and connect everything and throw the hitch up, maybe you can get it done in 2 hours, but definitely have some time to take if you're gonna do this. It is not exactly a direct bolt-on, even though that's how the kit is advertised. But I will say it looks great. It's got a nice black finish on it. You got plenty of harness lead. I already put a test light in, test probe, and I tested the lights, turn signals, brake lights. Everything works perfectly, exactly what I wanted. So we are done. Alright guys, I hope that helps you. Now if you're in the Minnesota area and you want a trailer hitch installed, you can definitely check me out, Pete's Garage, facebook.com/Pete's Garage Can Fix It. Please like and subscribe if you like the video. I could really use some subscriptions. This channel eventually, we're going to be getting more people filming, more media on there. Have a great day, guys.